How can you look for a crypto company that offers good job stability? This was a question that was posed last week in a live Q&A that I hosted with a number of job seekers looking for their first role within the crypto space. And I thought it was a great question because when you think about the crypto industry, one of the first things that you think about probably isn't stability. Definitely not price stability, but also probably not job stability by an extension of that. So let's talk about some strategies and things you can think about when evaluating companies as a job seeker that you can hopefully minimize the potential of having a bad experience with a company due to instability, due to layoffs, or anything along those lines. And one thing that's important or to caveat is I think no matter how well you do at this process, no matter how much research you put in, still doesn't guarantee anything. Sometimes some of the best opportunities after a ton of research, after things look great, sometimes they turn out not to be, but that still doesn't mean you shouldn't conduct that research in the first place. So let's talk about it here. Now, one thing I think is really important, and sometimes this is the most critical thing that you can do, is to evaluate the management experience of the company that you're interested in working at. When I say the management experience, I think primarily the C-level and specifically the CEO, but also any type of direct managers that you have there as well. And when I say evaluate that management experience, I'm talking specifically about anything that they've said about general business practice, any kind of outward persona that they might portray. Are they very professional? Have they been a polished executive for a number of years? Are they a young, inexperienced individual that is kind of flying really close to the sun? And you'll probably know that when you see that in the crypto industry, because we see that quite often. And a lot of times it doesn't end super well. But evaluate the management experience. Is it a person that you would want to work for? Is it a person that you feel like would reliably manage a company in the face of adversity? Because one of the big things that we're trying to get here is how well a company will do, not just in good times, because there are some fantastic times in the crypto industry and it's wonderful to work in it when that happens, but there are also some bad times, and it's how well can you weather the storm when that happens. And as a CEO, as a C-level, as a manager, is that somebody that you trust to weather the storm? So think about that when you're evaluating a management, when you're evaluating that C-level. Are they prepared or potentially equipped, or would you trust them? Because you don't always know until you get inside the company, but from the outside in, would you trust them to weather the storm? The second thing you want to think about is prior funding, or just total funding in general, and also maybe the frugality of the organization. Obviously, going back to the point on weathering the storm, if a company has raised a very large round of funding in the past and they're sitting on a large cash pile, they're probably going to be able to weather the storm of a crypto downturn or a greater tech economic downturn better than somebody who is not well capitalized. That said, if that company is also burning money like crazy, that might be null and void. So when you think about this, look at not only just the funding as a whole, but how that company is spending it. Do they appear on the outside, because you don't always know, but do they appear on the outside to be relatively frugal? Or are they just crazy high flying, throwing money around left and right, acting and spending like the money isn't going out of style? What are they doing with that money? And think about that, because again, going back to it, how can these organizations survive a downturn? Because we've seen it before in crypto. It's almost happened every 4 years. So think about that when you're looking at that prior funding. One additional thing I would look at is to think about the longevity of the team. How long have they been around? Now, this isn't foolproof, nothing is, but if a company has weathered this storm before, if they've been around since 2017, maybe they are prepared and they've been through tough times before and they're ready to deal with tough times again. They've learned from those tough situations. If a company is a year old and they've never experienced anything but good times, are they going to be able to deal with those situations? And maybe that's a question that you can ask as a job seeker in an interview is, hey, how are you prepared to deal with these tough times? But thinking about the longevity of a team, have they been around for a bit? And if they haven't been around with this company, have they been in the industry previously? Has that management team been around, not just with this company that maybe it was only founded 6 months ago, but have they worked in this industry prior to, and do they have that longevity, that experience as a whole? Going to the point that no amount of research is enough to really guarantee that you are successful in terms of finding the perfect opportunity and the perfect stability, we can look at Coinbase, for example. Now, in my opinion, and some people might have differing opinions, but in my opinion, Coinbase is one of the most well-respected and in many cases, kind of like the gold star for crypto employment, or in the past has been. In 2020, when they grew incredibly fast, they went from like 1,000 to close to 5,000 employees, something along those lines. And if you asked, I think, anybody in 2021 what one of the safer places to go work at was, you would likely think that would be Coinbase. When you would talk about management experience, Brian Armstrong had been operating Coinbase since 2012, I think, had seen multiple downturns. They had a ton of funding. They were then publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. They were bringing in tons and tons of revenue. Everything on paper looked fantastic. However, when the downturn hit in 2022, they conducted significant layoffs because that they overhired. And so when you looked at Coinbase on paper prior to those layoffs, by any metric, you would really think that they were amongst the best in terms of hiring. However, at that point in time, that research probably would have steered you wrong if you were hired at the latter end prior to those layoffs. So not to say that Coinbase is not a well-run company or anything like that, but just going to the point of sometimes when things look fantastic on the surface and you conduct fantastic research and everything looks really good, just because you conducted that perfect research doesn't mean it's a guarantee. On the flip side, when you think about stability too, you might have looked at a 5-person seed stage company that looked like a huge career risk prior to starting work there, and maybe you took a job at that tiny 5-person startup, whereas somebody else took that job at Coinbase, and you still have your job and the person at Coinbase got laid off. So I think career risk is subjective and not objective, as well as stability. It's not always exactly what it seems, but again, if you are able to evaluate the management experience, evaluate the funding and how that company is spending money and dealing with certain things, both in good times and bad, and then also evaluate the longevity of the team, I think those things will put you in a better position to find jobs in which there might be more stability. If you have any questions on the subject of job stability or career risk within the crypto space, feel free to leave a comment below. We'll definitely do my best to get back to you. And then in addition to that, if you're open or interested in new opportunities within the crypto space, feel free to reach out to our team at Proof of Talent. I'll include a link below. Would love to hear from you. And until next time.